The Trickster rework is here, and holy guacamole, I think Trickster went from being one of the worst Ascendancies to straight up one of the best. And not just one of the best for a specific niche, one of the best for a lot of builds. Like, straight up, the level of generic power on this Ascendancy now is... it's crazy. I could see this build being straight up one of the best builds for a lightning strike character, which sounds weird to say, but it just is. This Ascendancy offers so much like quality, life, and power. It's crazy. It really is. And let's go into, first off, the biggest node of them all, Polymath. This Ascendancy point is crazy strong. Okay, just for context, I'm going to show you my Righteous Fire character that I had in last league, where I kind of min-maxed up to about level 97, 98 or so. This is a character that has two large cluster setups, and I have about 10 masteries on this tree. This node, for a character who isn't even min-maxing into this node, gets 30% more damage and 10% recovery of life, ES, and mana on kill. It's crazy. This is huge quality life. This is you never die while mapping quality life, plus probably the highest damage out of the vast majority of the Ascendancy nodes in the game. There's special niche cases like the Fatal Flourish for attack-based trappers that is going to be more damage than this, but outside of something like that, this node is very hard to beat, especially if you have a tree, which on league starts, this is going to be generally the case, where you're not doing cluster jewels and you're actually getting masteries. Not only that, there's going to be cases where, you know, you might not normally grab a mastery because you're like, it's not quite good enough, but then you see that this node gives you 3% more damage when you click that mastery node, then you do it. Like, for example, say you don't care about 2% regen of energy shield. This is like only okay quality life or something. But then you see this Ascendancy point on your tree and you think, you know what? I'll take a little bit of quality life and 3% more damage and recovery. It's crazy how good this node is. I'm in love with this node. It's so powerful, and it's so cool that you can min-max into building around it on your tree. This isn't something I would pick up on my first lab because you don't really have a ton of masteries on your first lab, but maybe by the second lab, this thing just really starts to pop off, and it'll keep getting better as you get more passes, as you upgrade your character, as you level up. I'm so excited for this node. Not only that, another big change is the change to Heartstopper. Heartstopper previously was like half the time it feels good, half the time it feels bad, and it's just kind of meh. They changed it by taking away 10% of the less damage taken for dots and adding in 40% less damage taken to hits while during the portion where you're not taking damage over time. In my opinion, this makes Heartstopper much better, and it's a very strong node, defensively speaking. It's still something where, like, I would say in hardcore, I don't know if I would want to build around it or not, but it's just so strong. If you hit that 5 seconds where you're taking 40% less damage from hits, you're going to be able to survive some crazy one-shots just from that node alone. Slash, the quality of life of taking less damage from dots over time is just so nice when you're mapping with so many damage over time effects being on the ground. Maybe those will be less painful to deal with, but this is just, in my opinion, this is another huge change for Trickster, another huge buff. Now, getting into some of the crazier nodes, the energy shield nodes, they kept Escape Artist the same, which Escape Artist was pretty solid. I've built quite a few Tricksters, and when you scale into the Evasion plus Energy Shield archetype, it can feel quite good defensively. Not only that, but Spellbreaker makes it so you can min-max into Suppress as well pretty easily. If you just have Spellbreaker, the Energy Shield suppress nodes on the passive tree around here, and then maybe you get something like Invenerate, you're going to be able to cap your Spell Suppress fairly easily, in my opinion, and that just makes a node like this crazy strong, because not only do you end up capping your spell suppress, which is 50% less damage taken from spells, but on top of that, if you're full energy shield, you take another 10% less damage, or another 10% reduced damage, which equates to 20% less damage, because it's going from 50 to 60, and it could be even better. It could be going from 55 to 65, which would be maybe more like 25 to 27% less damage taken. Just if you're getting hit while in full energy shield, that's a lot of damage reduction. Not to mention, it gives you a scenario where you can build into energy shield recharge with Wicked Ward. So if you have a character that has, for example, 95% evade chance, attacks are very rarely going to hit you hard enough to kill you, and when they do hit you, it'll be a while before you hit again. But then you combine that with the feels good of every time you get hit by spells, you're proccing your recharge, which can be an insane amount of sustain per second. Recharge energy shield can get out, I think it starts at like 40% of your energy shield or something like that, and you can scale it up without too much investment to be quite high numbers in terms of if you hit Spress and every other spell hits you to make you recharge energy shield, you're going to be popping off the full. This node is going to feel very, very strong to build around. Not only that, Soul Drinker, this is the Giga Ascendancy node that they had revealed last time. I never built around it because it's just such a rare jewel, it just didn't really exist on the market. But this node also enables Trickster, or not Trickster, basically Slayer-like capabilities, but for energy shield. And on top of that, it gives you attack and cast speed, which feels very, very good to have. So it's like, it's damage, it's quality of life and speed, and on top of that, it gives you some really nice sustain. So I think all in all, these nodes, the energy shield nodes, are going to be leading to probably the best energy shield builds in the game. I think it's going to be hard to be any other build and be as good as Trickster is at being an energy shield based build. These nodes are just so crazy to me. They're really, really insane. And then on top of that, you have one step ahead. This is the one I saved for last because I think it's one of the highest quality life nodes in the game. And when I say quality of life, I mean, say for example, you have Elder doing his suck attack. That attack, which normally would slow you down to like not moving at all and result in you dying to Shaper Balls, getting shot across the arena because you're doing like Uber Elder, for example. That suck attack does nothing to you because you're moving at 108% base action speed. This is like Juggernaut's node, but on some extra juice. Because not only does it make it so these slow effects don't destroy you, it makes you faster, about 10% faster, which is sizable. Not quite as good as like Tailwind where you're going 20% faster, but it means you can't get frozen. It means you can't be chilled, basically, is what it means, because those things do pretty much nothing to you now. Unless, for example, the one counterpoint for chill or freeze where they still do something to you is, say you're doing action speed and you're taking your action speed above 108% or whatever, then it can get slowed down to 108%. But you see what I'm saying. Point is, it makes your character move faster and it feels good because you don't get screwed over by all these random effects that just slow you down and grab you and are just annoying. And it just makes those not a feels bad thing. And then on top of that, it also makes enemies 10% slower, which basically, it doesn't sound like much, but there will be scenarios in boss fights or attacks where you basically have an extra, I don't know, a quarter of a second or half of a second to respond, and that's going to be the difference in you dodging the attack and not dodging the attack. It's one of those things where you're not really going to be able to say, okay, I didn't die because of that, but there's definitely 100% going to be instances where you do survive, and it's because of that extra little slowness on the bosses. It's not like overpowered, but man, this is a feels good node, and I'm definitely going to want to include it in builds. And then Swift Killer, I think, is the one I think I'm least excited about, but it's still a neat node. It still has some interesting implications in terms of charge duration that applies to both your endurance and power charges. If you get any sort of remote sustain for those charges, you're going to have pretty good uptime because of the charge duration. And on top of that, it builds into the ability to stack frenzy charges, which could lead to some interesting builds. All in all, I'm stoked for this Ascendancy. This is like, when they said Trickster rework, I was high on copium. Every single time everybody was talking about the Trickster rework's not going to be that good, I was like, oh, it's going to be best Ascendancy ever. And this is straight up, in my opinion, taking Trickster from one of the worst to one of the best, and I don't even have a doubt in my mind about that. I think there's a very good chance we see 10+% Trickster player base, or even higher, frankly. I think it's that good. There's so many builds that this can be used on. I'm probably going to make maybe 4 or 5 Trickster builds next league. Minimum. I don't know. This Ascendancy is so crazy to me. And speaking of Trickster builds, I'm going to League Star Righteous Fire Trickster. I've done it, one could say a few times. I think collectively, I've made videos about League Star and Trickster Righteous Fire, I want to say 2 times, maybe? And I've made Trickster Righteous Fire League Starter 3 times. In my very, very early days playing PoE, I League started Trickster Righteous Fire at one point. It's a build that is very close to my heart. I like Trickster Righteous Fire a lot, and I've been able to do some pretty solid things with it. The character I made last league was able to do Uber bosses. It was able to be quite strong and well-rounded, and this Ascendancy rework takes it from quite strong and well-rounded to just way better. And it also is the scenario where last league, it felt like I had basically 2 dead nodes or 1.5 dead nodes in terms of my Ascendancy points, where it just felt bad, more or less. And this is, every node I pick feels good to pick, and I like it. It's a scenario where I can feel good about league starting as Righteous Fire as a life-based Trickster, min-max into it decently, and then just make a completely different version that's ES-based as well, and both of those versions are going to be very, very good, in my opinion. Enough so where last league I thought, when I min-maxed this into Energy Shield, I thought, in some ways this can compete with Inquisitor Righteous Fire, in some ways. And now that I'm looking at this, I think Trickster can maybe outscale Inquisitor. And by maybe, I'm like 90% sure it can outscale Inquisitor. I think it's that strong. We'll see in the coming leagues, but I'm going to work on putting together some league start information on Trickster Righteous Fire. I was pretty stoked about the... let me just open it up real quick here. I was pretty stoked about the... this character, the Inquisitor, Cast and Crit Bomber, and then setting this up for a league start test. I did get the chance to put together some... basically really crappy gear and test it out on some T60 maps and some Hydra and Minotaur Guardians. The moral of the story is the people in the comments, they caught it and they were 100% right, which is, for the purpose of generating fanaticism charge, Cyclone does not count as having attacked in the past second. My entire plan revolved around having that extra AoE and the extra mana cost reduction from fanaticism. And because Cyclone didn't work for proccing those fanaticism charges, the setup I had planned in my head just kind of fell apart because mana became a very big issue, and AoE was also an issue in terms of how much you could overlap the Blade Blasts, because lacking that AoE I think hurt quite a bit. Now, I still think I can make this character in a league starter. I might make a video about it. I'm not 100% sure, because I am full on committed to the Trickster Righteous Fire Dream. That's what I'm 100% going to make some videos out. If people really want me to still make a video on my other concepts I had thought up for the Inquisitor, I will. But just know I'm not going to be league starting it. I'm not going to be making daily update videos on that. It's going to be a character I'm going to make as maybe a third or fourth character in the league type of thing, and not a league starter, because I'm just so excited about Trickster and I want to play Trickster. Anyways, that's the video. Thanks for watching, Exiles. Take care.